Eco Certifications Hospitality, the Hospitality Channel.
The podcast.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Eco Certifications Hospitality Podcast. Today, we're diving into the reality of environmental officer or sustainability manager in hospitality, not the polished version or what is written on the job description, but what really happens behind the scenes. I'm joined by Sebastien, former chief engineer in hotels and now a consultant in energy management and sustainability. Hi, Sebastien.
Hello, everybody, and hi, Alexandrie. Thank you for having me on your podcast.
Before we start, just a quick context for listeners. Sebastien and we actually met almost 2 years ago now, when you came as a consultant in one of the hotels where I was working as environmental officer. And since then, we stayed in touch, and you took part of the network I am running called Eco Certifications Hospitality, where we connect hospitality professionals and consultants. This podcast is actually the first of a series because we will have a long conversation, and we thought it would be interesting to share it in different episodes. Let's dive in.
Let's go. Let's dive in.
All right, Sebastian, from your experience working with hotels today, what's the real situation of environmental officers or sustainability managers?
I'm really glad we are talking about this topic because there is actually a big gap between perception and reality. Just to give a bit more context, I'm mostly working in Asia now with different types of hotels, from independent to large group. And linking with your question, I honestly feel that most of environmental officers are overwhelmed, and not because they lack skills, but most likely because the scope of the role is quite unrealistic. They are expected to manage or to have an eyes on energy, water, waste, procurement also, certification, carbon reporting, and so on, and all at once. And often they are doing this alone or with very limited support.
Yeah, that resonates a lot. I remember feeling like I had five different jobs at the same time. But from your external perspective, what do you see as their biggest underlying problem?
The main issue is that they are stuck in the middle of everything. They sit between management pushing for cost control and quick return on invest, between operational teams who already feel overloaded, and also external pressure with regulation, certifications, brand standards, and the contradiction is constant.
Exactly. You're expected to reduce costs, to reduce CO2 emissions, but also to know how much to invest for that. You must implement change, but without disrupting operations. It's a balancing act all the time.
Yes, and on top of that, they usually don't have direct authority. So they have responsibility without real power. And let me ask you, based on your experience when you were in that role, did you feel like you could actually enforce decisions?
Not really influence, yes. Authority, no. A lot of it was about convincing people, repeating things, training again and again, and sometimes just accepting that things wouldn't change as fast as you wanted.
That's exactly what I observed today. A huge part of the job is internal persuasion, not technical work. And this is something people underestimate. They think sustainability is about systems, frameworks, and data, but actually in hotels is mostly about people.
100%. And people are all different and all have their own approach of the job. That's make the communication sometimes complicated. That's actually something I really noticed when I have discussion with the consultants in touch with eco certifications, hospitality network. But what makes them efficient is that most of these consultants are not just experts, they are really passionate people. They really care about the industry and about helping hotels in a practical way and tangible insights. It really helps to get the attention of the employees and managers. On top of that, especially in hospitality, turnover is high. Did you see that as well?
All the time. You train a team, and 3 months later, half of them are gone. So the environmental officer ends up in a loop, train, repeat, re explain, start over again and again. And that creates a lot of frustration.
Yes, and it also eats up your time. Which brings me to something you mentioned earlier, the workload. What are they actually spending their time on?
A bit of everything, and that's the problem. They are collecting data manually, preparing some reports, and important, they are chasing department for information. They are also updating spreadsheets, even sometime organizing trainings, also dealing with certification requirements. And at the end, very little time is left for strategy or impact.
That's so true. I remember thinking, I'm supposed to drive sustainability, but I'm just managing Excel files all day.
Exactly. And with that come another issue. They are expected to be experts in everything: energy, water system, waste, carbon accounting, sustainable procurement, also Excel file. All of these are completely different fields.
Yes, and you never feel fully legitimate in all of them. Like, I could handle some areas well, but others, like carbon calculations or technical energy systems, were much harder. Your HVAC introduction training helped me a lot to understand the basics and how these systems works and are connected together.
Oh, thank you, Alexandrie. I'm really glad to hear that. Indeed, I saw this problem many times. Some persons are reporting energy consumption, they are dealing with energy consumption figures, but they don't really understand how system like HVAC works. This is why I created with Nicolas, another sustainability expert, a basic engineering introduction training. This is an online course, very simple, very accessible, just to help the hotel team who are not engineer to understand the fundamentals.
For me, who studied marketing and communication, it was very useful. I'll put the link in the description of this video if anybody is interested in having more details about this online training.
Thank you so much, Alexandrie. If anybody has any question about this engineering introduction training, feel free to reach us. We'll be more than happy to give you more details about it. And to remain on engineering topic, especially energy management, when I do consultancy in hotels, I try to involve as much as possible the environmental officer in the energy optimization process. Why? Because, of course, the person in charge for engineering remains the chief engineer, but the environmental officer is the person who needs to reuse the energy consumption figures for the reporting, for example, for the green certification or for the CO2 calculation. And also, most of time, the sustainability manager or environmental officer is one of the person who need to explain and present the bottom line of energy consumption.
And at the same time, they have to justify everything financially. That was one of the hardest parts for me, proving return on invest.
Ah, yeah, that's a big one. Every initiative needs to be justified. How much does it cost? What is the return on invest? How fast we'll get this return on invest? Or even which quantity of carbon equivalent we'll be able to save? But sometimes the benefits are indirect or long term, which is make it even harder.
Or intangible, like staff engagement, brand image, it's not always easy to quantify.
Exactly. So they spend a lot of time trying to translate sustainability into financial language or into any other rational language. And if they can't, projects get delayed or even rejected. But somehow, I would say that it's not a bad thing. Recently, sustainability became much more pragmatic than before. Each project or implementation needs to be assessed with KPIs now. And this is another part of sustainability manager job to figure out and to create KPIs that reflect the implementation they have put in place. It's definitely not a bad thing because to be more credible, sustainability need to be more tangible and more pragmatic.
Another huge time drain is certification. Now, what's your view on that?
Certifications are a kind of double-edged sword. On one hand, they bring structure and they reinforce the brand image of the hotel. But on the other hand, they are extremely time consuming. There is a lot of documentation to create. The data collection is very difficult in most of the time. Interpretation of criteria is also not that easy. And even sometimes the requirements are not really clear.
Yes, and you're always afraid of missing something or misunderstanding a criterion.
Exactly. So environmental officers tend to overcompensate. They double check everything, they over document, they over prepare, and most of the time they don't sleep much a few weeks before the certification audits. But certification adds an important workload.
And stress.
Yes, definitely stress, especially if getting the certification is part of their KPIs. We come back on that. And that also brings us to something that I think is not talked about enough: isolation and feeling of loneliness.
Oh, yes, completely. You're often the only person in the hotel in the or even the company with with that role.
That's what I see as well. They don't always have any internal peers or structure support or someone to validate their initiatives or decisions. So they are constantly second guessing themselves.
I remember that feeling very well. You're never fully sure if you're doing things the right way, and there's no clear game my playbook.
Exactly. And yet, expectations are high, which creates a kind of pressure that's hard to explain. You are responsible for something strategic because lot of hotels and resort chains took the commitment to get eco certified or to reduce their CO2 emission in order to please their guests and their investors, which is really important also, and so to maintain a certain level of business expansions. However, the resources that usually comes with strategic roles are often not provided or are incomplete.
Yes, that's very accurate. And I think that's why many environmental officers feel like they're constantly behind.
Yes, unfortunately, because the reality is they don't lack motivation or they don't lack skills. They lack time, support, and clarity.
That's a powerful way to put it. If you had to summarize what you see in most hotels today, what would you say?
To summarize, well, I would say that environmental officers are expected to drive major transformation, but with limited resources and within complex organizations, while constantly justifying their existence. And this is probably the most dramatic. If you work in a hotel, after this podcast, I really hope you will see differently your sustainability manager because this role, this position is definitely much more complex than what it looks like.
That's very real. And honestly, I think if persons in charge of sustainability in their company are listening, they will recognize themselves in that.
I hope so, because the first step is acknowledging it. One more time, this role is not easy at all and is definitely not supposed to be handled alone.
That's a great note to end on. Thank you so much, Sebastien, for sharing your perspective and for turning this into a real conversation.
Thanks to you, Alexandrie. I think your experience in this position really brought this discussion to life.
And thank you all for listening. If this episode resonated with you, feel free to like it and share it. It will bring more visibility to this podcast. If you would like to drop a comment, we would love to hear your thoughts and experiences. We also remind you that there's a link in the description to visit our website, and I will put another link for you to get more details about Sebastien's engineering initiation training. Stay tuned by subscribing to the channel, and see you in the next episode.
Eco Certifications Hospitality, the Hospitality Channel.
The podcast.